3. Looking like I'm going to be doing a whole solo show tonight, but here we go with the opening music.
Midnight feeds still glowing. Boys, you listening? We're just pretending. Petitions rising in the frozen west. Cold fire under Alberta's chest. Maps don't move, but the people do. Power hums when the silence breaks through. Minneapolis burning around the edges. Not the players, just the ones near the ledges. Warnings whisper through polished teeth. Order talks when chaos breathes. Screens light up, the story bends. Truth wears makeup, depends who's friend. Welcome to the Hangout, baby, stay awake. Every headline's wearing lipstick and fake. I purr the news like the slow draw send. Lean in close, let the signal sink in. Red pill nation after dawn. I don't scream, I leave a mark. A preacher paused by a cameraman's grin. Holy ground with a needle pin. Charges filed, the choir stared. Faith and love did nobody spare. Stereotypes switching outfits again. Watch conviction fold into trend. Say it's growth, say it's brave. Funny how fast belief behaves. I don't judge, I just watch it fall. Patterns repeat like a late night call. Welcome to the Hangout. Sugar, take a seat. Truth sounds better when it's whispered sweet. I undress headlines, slow and clean. Tell you what they mean between the screens. Red pill nation, velvet tone. I don't fight, I let it be shown. A game character wakes up wrong. Accidentally says what you're not supposed to say. Icons aren't chosen. They slip. Greenland echoes through European halls. Lots of noise, no footsteps at all. Welcome to the Hangout, boys behave. I don't sell noise, I'll sell the wave. Watch the world through a smoky lens. No heroes here, just how it ends. Red pill nation, lights down low. I don't tell you what to think, I let you know. Same time next episode. Don't forget who read it to you.
Hi, this is Naroki5. I am going to be doing this until I die or I find something better to do. So please help me achieve this personal and, I think, noble objective by contributing to my Patreon or Subscribestar. Link is down below.
For
Every
those
little
who
bit
wonder
helps.
what exactly the standards are on RPN, the answer is simple. The Red Pill Nation has no standards, none whatsoever, and it doesn't need any. Besides, if they had any standards, do you really think they'd have me? Taylor Swift explaining.
Welcome, everybody, to the Red Pill Nation Hangout, number 483. It's looking like I'm doing a solo show here, unless somebody responds fairly quickly. Yeah, well, I'm getting used to doing solo shows, actually, so I'm not really all that concerned about it. Okay, there it is. All right, so welcome to the Red Pill Nation Hangout. I am your host, Naroki5. Announcements. Okay, if you go to the low bar, I do have a Gab group, and I also now have a Telegram group that you can join in. The like I said, I'm going to be doing this until I die or find something better to do. Yeah, there's my Patreon down below. Feel free to subscribe to it. Go over, give me a little love. I need a little love. Other than that, I really don't have any other announcements to make here at this point. Just a little bit of a morality lesson before you start. And understand that whatever it is you're going through, whatever difficulties you've got, unless it's some type of a chronic disease that you're going to die from, or you're like there's exceptions to the rule, but I mean, whatever it is, understand that this too shall pass. Understand that whatever it is that you're going through, you will go out the other side. And if you're humble enough and you're willing enough to like listen and get yourself out of the way, you can see how that experience not only benefits you, but how you can take that experience and have it benefit other people right now, such as the people who are actually insane and crazy enough to actually be watching me right now. Want to say hello to the two people that are actually crazy enough to be listening to me right now. At least I know I'm not the craziest person on the planet. But oh yeah, now that my tea is done, let's get right into the topics tonight. Oh yeah. I am in order of size of following BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, which is, by the way, Odyssey's getting close to 200, MGTOW TV, YouTube, which has somehow slid into 5th place, no longer dead last among all the platforms, and of course Brighteon. I also have, let me just think, am I still stuck at 11? I'm still at 11 followers. Yeah, I'm also at Kick and Twitch. I really don't give a damn about Twitch, but I mean, if you want to keep following me on Kick, by all means, feel free to follow me on Kick. I'm gonna be there. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing this until I die or find something better to do. So, what are the topics tonight? Topic number 1, Boy Scouts drop DEI after losing 90% of their membership. Boy, do I have some things to say about that one. 2, classless demonstration by leftists when USA men's Olympic hockey team wins gold medal. 3, leftists freaking out because Larry Ellison, Paramount, is buying DC Comics. Well, he's not only buying DC Comics, he's also buying Warner Brothers. That just happened today. Might be covering that. Probably going to be covering that on the next show. 4, Grace Randolph has embarrassing meltdown over a man with a Tourette system at the BAFTA Awards, then as actually stupid enough to play victim and double down. 5, Iran's president appears to have been killed by the U.S. government. And 6, Chronicles of Narnia might be the next victim of this woke as Barbie director Greta Gerwig gets the chair for that show. Yeah, I got some rather interesting things to say about that one as well. So, without any further ado, let's just hop right into this. Now, I have a video to play. It's specifically about Pete Hegseth reacting to what the Boy Scouts did. I'm actually kind of glad he did that, but I mean, again, right? Like, let's just have a listen to the video. and then we can move on here. It's about 6.5 minutes.
For more than a century, Boy Scouts of America prepared over 130 million American boys to make moral and ethical choices, not just during their formative years, but for a lifetime as they grew into men. The first few words of the Scout Oath exemplify this. Quote, "On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country." The Boy Scouts are embedded in our communities. They're sponsored by community organizations, service clubs, and churches. Many Boy Scouts have gone on to senior leadership positions in their communities, in business, in our nation's military, and as elected representatives in local, state, and national office. 6 Boy Scouts have been elected President of the United States. 11 of the 12 men to walk on the moon, Boy Scouts. Boy Scout training focused on responsible citizenship, character and leadership development, patriotism, personal fitness, self-reliance, faith, and a wide range of outdoor skills. It was a great program, and this department had a close relationship with the Scouts almost since its inception, as many troops meet on military bases. After 2012, however, the Boy Scouts lost their way, and a once great organization became gravely wounded. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, crept in. The name was changed to Scouting America. Girls were accepted. The focus on God as the ruler of the universe was watered down to include openness to humanism and earth-centered pagan religions. Scouting became an organization that no longer supported and celebrated boys. They even welcomed the destructive myth of gender fluidity and transgenderism to infiltrate their membership. Along the way, standards were lowered and merit destroyed in favor of an insidious, radical, woke ideology that is anti-America and anti-American. The result, membership cratered. Americans didn't want this. In 1970, 10 million boys participated in Boy Scouts. Currently, less than 1 million boys and girls participate. Further, many of these community organizations that once supported Scout troops, they withdrew their support. And Scouting America, the parent organization, filed for bankruptcy protection. The changes Scouting America made since 2012 have also jeopardized the relationship with this department. And I was very seriously considering ending our support of Scouting altogether. We have a department to protect, after all. Beyond that, the policies Scouting America have in place violate President Trump's Executive Order 14173, entitled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. But before making this big change, I decided to meet with the current Scouting leadership to convey our deep concerns. Based on that face-to-face conversation and subsequent conversations, Scouting America agreed to make several key reforms. And let me briefly highlight a few of them. First, Scouting America has agreed to comply immediately with the provisions of Executive Order 14173. This includes reviewing and replacing politicized, divisive, and discriminatory language throughout the organization, programs, and all publications. No more DEI, zero. Second, the, quote, Citizen in Society merit badge that encouraged Scouts to explore diversity, equity, inclusion, and identity. They always mask it under a name that sounds great, but it's doing something else. And then asks those Scouts to engage in activism on those topics. That badge has been discontinued. Third, Scouting America will modify its policy to make clear that membership will be based solely on biological sex at birth and not gender identity. That means that the application, any application, will have only 2 sex designations, male and female, and the application must match the applicant's birth certificate. Scouting will also make clear that biological boys and girls will not be allowed to occupy or share intimate spaces together, toilets, showers, tents, anywhere like that. Fourth, Scouting America will honor those who serve by waiving the registration fees for children of active duty, guard, and reserve families. Should have happened a long time ago. Fifth, in partnership with the War Department, Scouting America will introduce a new military service merit badge. These and other changes that Scouting America's leadership committed to, in that room right over there, will hopefully result in a rededication to the foundational ideals that have defined scouting for generations: duty to God and country, leadership, character, and service. However, as President Reagan famously said, trust but verify. This agreement is new, and the department's support for Scouting America is contingent on them making substantial progress toward reaching these and many other positive changes in the next 6 months. At that time, we'll vigorously review progress and decide whether or not to continue our support. The onus is squarely on Scouting America to deliver. If we're unsatisfied with Scouting America's progress toward and commitment to the agreed upon reforms, we will find them in violation of the President's executive order and cease our support. We hope that doesn't happen, but it could. Ideally, I believe the Boy Scouts should go back to being the Boy Scouts, as originally founded, a group that develops boys into men, maybe someday. There are also additional youth and boys organizations, groups like Trail Life USA and Awana clubs, that are already compliant with President Trump's executive order that the department may eventually support as well. But we're watching, and we're watching closely. We look forward to providing you with updates after our 6-month review, and wish the best to Scouting America.
Yep, well, there you go, folks. Yep. What can I possibly tell you about this? The whole organization went from being an organization with from 10 million people, 10 million members, down to less than a million in just a few years. Now, I'm going to mention that, I mean, I was a scout for a year, and I almost joined the cadets at one point. My issue with the cadets is that when I went to observe what the guy who was head of the cadets in the town that I lived in, yeah, let's just say I don't exist to be yelled and screamed at all the time. Now, it's my understanding, having spoken to people in the armed forces and people in the cadets, that is not necessarily the case with every single cadet unit, but the guy that I saw seemed to be enjoying the power a little bit too much. And my environment, where I was being yelled and screamed at all the time in the first place, I really didn't feel like going elsewhere to be yelled and screamed at the same time. I will, however, point out that we did have when I was in the Cubs, the Cub master of my unit, he died in a car accident. So we actually had women running the Cubs in the town I grew up in. It wasn't until I got to the Scouts where it got better. And yeah, one of the guys that was running it was probably, I mean, in today's environment, he would have probably have been considered a leftist. But I mean, he knew a lot about nature and he respected it. And again, I don't have any desire to be a scoutmaster or anything like that now. But I mean, I learned a lot about the outdoors when I was within both the Cubs and the Scouts. So yeah, that was an important thing. Do I believe the Cubs and the Scouts are very good, just like the Girl Guides and whatnot for girls? Are they a good foundation, a good structure for what comes after when you grow up? Yeah, I think they are. I think they are. And I was a little bit, and again, this is going back to my personal experience with the Cubs, my experience with the Scouts in the city I grew up in. There were, and this is the reason why I wasn't overly surprised when I found out that the Scouts had done what they had done. At least one, maybe even two of the guys that ran the Scouts organization that in the town I grew up in would easily fall into the earth hippie type of guys, which would have probably suggested that there were a fairly large number of woke individuals that were in Scouts serving as scoutmasters and so on and so forth. That is also a potential suggestion that there were probably woke individuals all throughout the Scouts. And again, one of the most consistent things about wokeism, in fact, it's on MGTOW. I posted it up at all my other links right now. Oh yes, my other links, by the way, mine's Gab, MeWe, Facebook, mine's Gab, Getter, TLB Talks, some of those other places. It's perhaps not, given the tendency for Scouts and Cubs and Girl Guides and ventures to go out to, and cadets probably as well, although again, I was never in the cadets, to go out to camps and military bases and go on long hiking trips and so on and so forth. It is probably really shouldn't be all that surprising that you probably have, again, potentially some earth hippie types, like guys from the 60s and whatnot, who served as scoutmasters and scout leaders and so forth. So yeah, when Boy Scouts became Scouting USA, it really shouldn't come as any surprise. I think, methinks, that that the that there was probably more than a few individuals in the leadership of the Boy Scouts that were probably woke. And again, right, that whole there are alternative organizations to to Scouts, and that very, because it's ironically enough, because I'm gonna be talking about Greta Gerwig and how she somehow became the exception to the rule. But for the most part, get woke, go broke. Support for the Scouts dropped off probably by a solid, over the past few years, has dropped off by like 90% plus. Now, by any definition, that is a significant hit. There's no way that they can dance around that, and there's no way they can say they can generate whatever they want to generate and say, oh well, it's not that bad. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it is that bad. When you lose 90% of your participants, if a show loses 90% of its audience, by the way, it should be duly noted, right? And just as an example, CNN lost like something like 70 to 80% of its audience. When you lose that amount of audience, right? Like there's gonna be cuts that are gonna have to be made, and there are gonna have to be changes that are gonna have to be made. And the ideologues, like the believers of wokeism, again, right? Because these people want to just put hands over the ears and just go la 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 la, and not actually admit the facts. But I mean, here's the bottom line on this: get woke, go broke. Scouting America went woke, and to absolutely nobody's shock, they're now going broke. And they're now on the verge of thanks to Pete Hegseth, they're now losing the support of the U.S. government. Which, by the way, and again, right, as Scouts, you had access to locations that you wouldn't normally have access to as any other person. So there's definitely a there's definitely a factor to do about that. But again, right, this is what happens when you do this, and you could see the writing on the wall when the scouts did this a few years ago. You could see what was going to happen to the scouts. You know, they can make the claim that there is no such thing as get woke, go broke. But I mean, for the most part, it is you will occasionally you'll get lightning in a bottle, and there will be exceptions to the rule. But I mean, again, given the socialist leftist leanings of wokeism, that's usually not likely going to happen. So, I mean, what can I tell you? The scouts wised up. They've got competition. That competition was probably decimating them too, and they did it to themselves, right? Like, I don't have kids, but if I had kids, I wouldn't be putting them in Boy Scouts. I wouldn't be putting them in Scouting Canada, you know? Uh, like, I mean, the buying. Oh, and I have to also throw in this, right? Because this seems to be a very, very big issue with leftists. They really want access to the kids. And the reason why they want access to the kids, not just in the schools, but in organizations like the Cubs and the Scouts. The reason why they want access to the kids is that they need to be engaging in indoctrination. If they don't engage in indoctrination, if they're not indoctrinating, then it's like, it, like, again, right, if they don't have access to the kids, right, then they're everything that they're doing kind of dies, right, because the people who are pushing them age up. But if they have access to the kids and they're able to indoctrinate enough kids, then this thing will just continue to go off on its own without any effort on the part of the people who are doing it. Now, that is a bit of a double-edged sword. There's always a yin to a yang on this. The yang to the yin on this is that programming does get broken. When that programming starts to break, especially when it starts to break on the levels where you have 5, 6, 7% of the voting male population actively involved in the manosphere, and every male between the ages of, say, 16 and 60 knows at least one guy has one guy in their circle, or is just simply a step removed from a guy who's involved in the manosphere, just like it is with feminism. And I'm not saying that is to say that they're the flip side of the coin. What I'm saying is that it's going to be very, very hard to indoctrinate when the information is out there to break that indoctrination, and it's available. Hold on a second. It's available out there with just the click of a mouse. Literally, that's all it is. It's available out there with just a click of a mouse. And again, right? And because I'm going to be doing I'm going to be doing the Naroki 5 live stream. In fact, I might even do the Naroki 5 live stream immediately after I do this show. The self-defeating cycle that this particular that wokeism engages in is, it's like I said, right? Like, it's been around long enough where you're actually starting to see the actual financial numbers, and their ability to control the narrative is rapidly disappearing. And yeah, this is what happens. This is exactly what happens. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Looks like nobody else wants to join us today. No one else wants to jump in today. So anyway, that is it for this particular topic. I'm going to move on to topic number 2 here. Just give me a second. Oh, wow. Okay. So I should have actually downloaded some footage of the U.S. scoring the goal that won them the gold medal at the Olympics. I really should have. I am going to say one thing. First of all, congratulations to the U.S. Olympic team for winning the gold medal at the Olympics. Absolutely was deserved. Connor Hellebuck had the game of his life. You replay that game again. Nathan McKinnon does not miss that shot. Okay, I'm not going to. Everyone's kind of a little bit annoyed with Nathan McKinnon missing a shot. I'm going to point out something to you. Back in 2002, Mario Lemieux, who was arguably the greatest player in the world, also missed on an open net against the U.S. in the finals. Of course, it didn't really matter because Canada ended up winning that game quite handily. But I mean, again, it's not like this is unprecedented, right? Canada's not going to win every game. This is kind of bittersweet for me, though, in a way, because what I'm looking at here when I talk about Team Canada not winning and it's, by the way, applies to both the men and the women's team, is that this is potentially, at least on paper anyway, the last time you're going to have like a Team Canada that is potentially going to include Alberta, right? There's a very, and don't let any of the mainstream media fool you on this. There is a very legitimate chance that Alberta might not even be Alberta. By 4 years from now, Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, and Quebec may not even be part of Canada anymore. Just let that sink in. And I understand that's going to maybe upset a few people, but I really don't care. The bottom line here is that, I mean, taxation without representation is gonna cause that. And so yeah, but Team USA did win the gold medal at the Olympics this year. Congratulations to them. Connor Hellebuck had the game of his life. And they got the overtime goal. It was by no means a blowout. I mean, I did run into a couple of really tasteless and clueless Americans who seem to think that an overtime goal is somehow some type of an epic own of Canada, and it isn't. But what I can specifically tell you, though, is that, you know, and they won the game. Donald Trump gave him a phone call, and here I'm going to play a couple videos here. The leftists just freaked out about this. And then I'm going to respond to some of the stuff that happened afterwards, because some of the stuff that happened afterward was just absolutely tasteless. But anyway, let's go.
Watch 1 minute. 1 minute. And by the way, your goalie played not bad.
Howie, say hi. Howie, say hi to him.
How you doing, Don? I have seen hockey goalies have slightly worse games than this. Unbelievable, and you were all unbelievable. And that team is pretty good you played. I don't know if it's not going to begin anytime soon, right? And, you know, I tell you what, I just told my people 2 minutes ago, I didn't know they'd be calling. I said, we're giving the State of the Union speech on Tuesday night. I could send a military plane or something, but if you would would like to. It's the coolest night. It's the biggest.
We're in.
Yeah.
Can you pick us up in Miami on Tuesday morning?
Yeah, Tuesday morning.
Close the northern border. We'll get cash and we'll get the military to get you guys over.
I'm gonna go. Let's go.
Boys are going to the State of the Union.
The nice thing about being president is I can tell you, you don't have to worry about the weather or landing. So we don't care if it's snowing, if it's the worst blizzard, we'll be sailing through that sucker just like you did at the ice cream.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Now we'll do it at the White House anytime. What would really be cool, and we'll do the White House the next day, we'll just have some fun. We have medals for you guys. And we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. I do believe I probably would be impeached, okay? But anyway, if you could work that out, I would be honored to have you. I'll introduce you to the whole...
I got it, boss. I got it.
Okay, you got it, Cash.
I'm on
Cash
it.
is doing it. I'm happy.
I'm fucking
Hey,
on
listen,
it.
Congratulations. That was an unbelievable game. I don't know if one person that wasn't... Everybody that called me said, I'm watching the hockey game. You know? I don't know if anybody that wasn't. And you're going to be proud of that game for 50 years as you grow older. I mean, it was amazing. So we love you guys. Congratulations. And I hope to see you, Cash, Tuesday night. And I want to shake hands. I'm going to shake hands with everybody. But I got to shake hands with that goalie.
Tuesday night. We'll see you Tuesday night, Mr. President.
See you Tuesday night.
I'm driving the bus, boss. We're bringing the whole...
Yep, it was a fun moment. Let's continue on. This is the State of the Union address. By the way, we'll be covering State of the Union next week.
Our country is winning again. In fact, we're winning so much that we really don't know what to do about it. People are asking me, please, 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 Mr. President, we're winning too much. We can't take it anymore. We're not used to winning in our country. Until you came along, we're just always losing, but now we're winning too much. And I say, no, 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 you're going to win again. You're going to win big. You're going to win bigger than ever. And to prove that point, here with us tonight is a group of winners who just made the entire nation proud. The men's gold medal Olympic hockey team. Come on in.
Yep, okay, so kudos to the U.S. team, especially the goaltender. Connor Hellebuck had the absolute game of his life. Now, he made that joke about the U.S. team, and then, of course, most of the members of the women's team could not actually make it to the State of the Union. They tried really, really hard to try to turn it into a political event. The part that really disgusts me, though, wasn't that. It was the fact. It was the response of, because there are Connor Hellebuck plays for the Winnipeg Jets, Austin Matthews plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Was the response of some Canadians to the fact that they shook the hand of Donald Trump, and of course, I really don't get what their fucking problem is. I mean, again, right? Kudos to the U.S. team for winning. You play that game most of the ways, and I think probably Canada ends up probably winning about 2/3 of the time. The issue here is the fact that there were some Canadians that just absolutely, and some Canadian sports reporters that just absolutely lost their shit over this. And as a Canadian myself, to those sports reporters, I am just going to say, yeah, go fuck yourself, dude. Like, really, seriously. The Trump is not planning on invading Canada anytime soon. The fact that you bought into Carney's bullshit to the point where you're trumpeting his propaganda like it's some type of an own is ridiculous. You got your own problems to concern yourself with, including the fact that you've got a province, including the province that I live in, by the way, that is on the verge of potentially leaving. In fact, if the vote were to happen today, I think there would be a bit of a shocker for the folks that are actually listening. I think the vote is probably in favor of leaving right now. And you're losing. This is just like when those same sports reporters lost their shit because well, let's just say some of the hockey players, Ivan Provorov, for instance, chose not to go and put rainbow tape on their stick. Now, to give you an idea of how bad it got with this, there was a player with San Jose, one of the goaltenders, I think, and they lost a game in Seattle, and I was at the Seattle Kraken page on Reddit. This should come as no surprise to anybody who's familiar with Reddit. And there were people gloating about the fact that because I can't remember who the name of the player is on the Sharks, let in an overtime goal. There were people gloating about the fact that he lost the game because he refused to put on the rainbow tape. Now, I didn't say anything. I posted up that there is a freedom of expression component to the Bill of Rights in the United States, and that he is free to not put rainbow tape on his stick. You cannot force him to do that. That is his choice. The Seattle Kraken Reddit blocked me and reported me to Reddit for doing that. And when I challenged them on it, not only one of the admins over there just blocked me, period, and the other one just chose to ignore me, but they blocked me from both. I think both of them blocked me from responding to them. And it's like, and I mean, I had a very simple question, and feel free to go. I mean, I know I don't have that many people listening that probably follow the NHL, but feel free to go over to the Seattle Kraken page on Reddit and ask them this question. Normally, I don't do calls to action, but in this particular case, I would be curious to hear their response to this. And my response to the administrators of the Seattle Kraken page is, how specifically does pointing out that a player is free to not have to put a rainbow tape on a stick, how does that make me a Nazi? How does pointing out actual constitutional legalities make me a fucking Nazi? How does that make me a white supremacist? I'd be kind of curious to hear what their response would, if they even would have the balls to fucking respond. Now, getting back into I'm saying that, because I'm not saying that American hockey fans are better, right? Because I mean, one of the things that I tended to run into, because this is kind of like a bit of a sore point. I really personally don't care, but there's hockey fans in the United States that seem to think because there isn't a Canadian team based in Canada that has won the Stanley Cup, that is some type of an own. And some of these individuals, when I pointed out to them that the Stanley Cup goes to cities and not countries, kept doubling down to the point of and these were Americans, by the way, that went double down to the point of absolute fucking stupidity, right? I even went and listed for one of them. I even went down and put the entire list of all the Stanley Cup winners from the beginning to the end, and I says, show me the place where Team Canada won the Stanley Cup, right? The Stanley Cup goes to cities, not countries. There's a bit of a chauvinistic attitude that Canada has about the NHL and the Stanley Cup. You know, they still comprise some 50% plus of the players in the NHL. I mean, play the game between Canada and the US again. Very realistic possibility that, say, for instance, Nathan McKinnon does not miss that shot, right? Like, yeah, it was a very close game. If I was a member of the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team, I would also shake the hand of Donald Trump, and yeah, I would go to the State of the Union. And if there are Canadians in Toronto or Winnipeg or whatever that are pissed because Austin Matthews went and shook the hand of the president, I'm just going to invite them to go fuck themselves. Yeah, you know what? Do that. I mean, I'm just going to admit this straight up. There's a very strong possibility that Team Canada might not win the gold medal next time around because they might be 4 provinces down come 2030. It could be that bad for them. And you know, it's something that I think they're going to have to take into consideration. Your team Canada as a country has got bigger things to fry than this. And also on the leftist response to Donald Trump's phone call, if you're too stupid to understand what a joke is, which of course, you know, we are talking about the mainstream media here. So yeah, they literally are probably too fucking stupid to understand what a joke is, right? And understand that it was like, yeah, the women's team is going to be invited, right? If they're too stupid to get that that's a joke, well, you know, that's a them problem. That is not a Donald Trump problem. For the sports fanatics, hockey fanatics in Canada, that got upset at Austin Matthews and Connor Hellebuck, get the fuck over yourself. For the Americans that are gloating shamelessly about this and acting as though this is some type of an epic own or that the U.S. somehow dominated the game, also, right, a 2-1 overtime win when the goaltender for the U.S. team was absolutely having the game of his life is not an O. 2-1 in overtime is not an epic O. It's a dramatic win, but it's not an O. But with that being said, I'm just gonna move on from this. Congratulations to Team USA. For the Canadians that got upset at Austin Matthews and Connor Hellebuck, yeah, you're gonna say it again. Get the fuck over yourself. And probably a miss for because there's very strong possibility that there won't be a Team Canada as we know at the next Olympics. And with that, I'm going to move on to the next topic here. Okay, next topic. Oh, okay, this one. Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison seems to be, and I did not know about this because, I mean, we might actually be covering this on the next show. Larry Ellison was also in the, apparently, because Netflix backed away from buying Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, by the way, if you're going to take the big 6 studios in LA. Disney, Universal, Paramount, Warner Brothers, yeah, there's 5 or 6 of them. I can't remember what the other ones are. Oh, Columbia, Columbia Pictures, and I can't remember Columbia TriStar, and I can't remember what the other one is right at the top of my head. But of the ones that are there, Warner Brothers is Disney. The only reason Disney isn't in the same uh isn't in the same pickle that Warner Brothers is in is because they have other financial investments. Oh, Universal, that's the other one. Yeah, okay. Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, 20th Century, that's the other one, 20th Century Fox, Columbia. Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, Universal, Columbia, and Paramount. But of those 6, Disney is absolutely the wokest of the woke. If you're going to go through the other ones, but the next one that comes up right after Disney would be Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers does not have the economic diversification that Disney has. So it should probably come as absolutely no surprise that, they're in trouble. Because if you were going to list off Paramount, by the way, is not actually all that far behind. If you're going to list them off, Paramount is not actually all that far behind in terms of wokeness. But I mean, yeah, like Disney and Warner Brothers were like 1 and 2 on that list. And Warner Brothers, surprise to absolutely nobody's surprise, is in economic trouble. Now, there were two companies that were interested in buying them up. But I mean, again, right? We're not talking about them. We're not talking about Warner Brothers. We're talking about DC. Now, DC never got as woke as the MCU did because the MCU got bought by Disney. Warner Brothers was never able to, probably because they chose to basically turn Marvel into basically a clone of the MCU instead of allowing them to kind of create a different, if they had created some type of a different look to say the MCU, they might have actually done better, but they didn't. So the whole thing, so the DCU had never really took off. DCCU never really took off with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has not had a very healthy run. And again, I have to point this out. Warner Brothers, although they weren't as bad as Disney in terms of wokeism, they were still up there, right? So it's perhaps not all that surprising. DC never got, although DC definitely had its moments, DC Comics never got as woke as, say, Marvel did. As a consequence, DC Comics is not hurting as badly as Marvel did. Yeah, their cinematic universe didn't take off particularly well, but DC Comics actually has been doing okay versus what's gone on with Marvel. And a lot of that ties into the fact that DC did not go woke as badly as what, say, Marvel did. Larry Ellison in the process, because I will be talking about Warner Brothers next, getting into Warner Brothers next week. He's also in the process of buying DC Comics. Now, again, right, anybody, because Larry Ellison is an open supporter of Trump, and blah, blah, blah. Because I try to stay away from the Israel stuff as much as humanly possible. But I mean, sometimes it's just not really possible to do so. You know, he's Jewish, he's pro-Israel, he's pro-Trump. There are leftists out there, just like there were leftists freaking out because the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team went to the State of the Union. Same thing happened here, and the whole thing is again, this is peak wokeism was right after Trump got elected in 2016. That basically that period between, say, about 2016 to 2020 is when it started really losing. Probably from about 2016 to 2022 is when it was peak woke. And after that, it started losing its impact. DC never, I mean, DC certainly had its moments, but DC never completely sunk the way Marvel did. A lot of that was because DC was not, hold on a second, I got to get some water in me. DC was not owned by Disney. We've covered Disney and some of the stuff that Disney has done here over the years. And well, what can I tell you, man? DC avoided that. DC avoided the get woke, go broke, and we've covered the Scouts. About the Scouts and about Scouts being the pinnacle of get woke, go broke, right? The DC did not fall into that trap, and because they didn't fall into that trap, and because Warner Brothers did not own DC outright, they could not wokeify DC nearly to the same extent that happened over with Marvel. And as an aside here, can you imagine how goddamn fucking insufferable Wonder Woman would have been if DC had gone completely woke? Just ponder that for a second. Just let that sink in. So the whole thing with Marvel, with DC and Larry Ellison is that now that Larry Ellison is allegedly buying DC, Larry Ellison is a supporter of Trump. Larry Ellison is not a quote unquote believer. Larry Ellison, by the way, is not a perfect human being. There was, and I'm going to actually look up. I'm going to type that in. Who was the guy who died just before testifying against Oracle? Testifying against, hold on a second, Larry Ellison. Okay, let's just see who this guy is, because I can't remember his name right off the top of my head here. Let me have a look. The guy's name is... Okay, I can't... Against, okay, maybe it was against Oracle. Hold on a second here. Okay. Oh, look at that. There's the Boeing whistleblower. Uh, the Boeing was. There's a lot of stuff about John Barrett. There's not a lot of stuff here. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to go ask. I'm gonna have to go ask the. Gonna have to go ask Google AI. But what I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna ask here is yeah, Ellison is not. Ellison is not the guy who. Ellison is not a Ellison is not a saint. Ellison is in it for the money. He's not in it for the morality. He's not a saint. Again, right, depending upon your Sushir Balaji, former open AI researcher and whistleblower. He was found dead in his apartment in San Francisco on November 26, 2024. His death was ruled suicide by San Francisco Medical Examiner's Office. The police found no evidence of foul play. Background on Sushir Balaji. Balaji had worked at OpenAI for about 4 years and became well known for publicly expressing concern about the company's practices, alleging that they may have violated copyright and development of their AI technology, particularly ChatGPT. ChatGPT, by the way, has got a reputation for being which kind of contradicts, by the way, what's going on here with, hold on a second, let me switch this up. Which, by the way, kind of contradicts what was been going on with, hold on a second, contradicts this thing about him being a diehard conservative and Trump supporter. He indicated his willingness to testify against OpenAI regarding these, specifically in connection with lawsuits filed by various news publishers and authors for authorized use of their content. Following his departure from OpenAI, he had become involved in discussions around significant lawsuits targeting the organization for its data gathering methods and implications on intellectual property rights. Balaji's passing had raised questions regarding. Yeah, hold on a second here. Let me switch the photo up. Passing raised concern regarding the implication of his knowledge and potential testimonies in ongoing legal disputes against OpenAI, particularly pertaining to copyright. So this is about copyright infringements. I'm going to get all of the relevant stuff here. By the way, I am using DuckDuckGo AI, not the Google AI. But anyway, yep, I will be posting up. If again, I think I can post this up at the Rumble's live chat as well. Yes, Jonathan. He is mentioned in the Woodruff files. Yeah, I'm going to be posting up some stuff here from my DuckDuckGo search here. I'm posting it up at both at Twitch, Kick, and Rumble. I'm going to be posting up 4 articles there for you to all have a look at. Yeah, Ellison is not a saint. Anybody who is under the impression that Ellison is some kind of a saint is probably not. Is probably a bit of an ideologue and maybe even a bit of an idiot. While he. And again, I hear a lot of the same talk applying to Elon Musk. I was never a really, and again, a lot of the people who've been on panels on the show have never really been fans of either. The thing you got to understand about guys like Ellison and Musk is that these guys are business people first, and they did not get to their positions by being nice guys, right? Like you have to have a certain degree of ruthlessness in order to rise to the levels that both Ellison and Musk had to rise to get to where to where they were going. That being said, though, in regards to the purchase of DC Comics, Ellison is going to be a business first model. And like I said, when I went back and talked about Get Woke, Go Broke, in particular around Scouting America and the Boy Scouts, Ellison, it does not and will not buy into the 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 dogma of wokeism. He will not go into that. He's more interested in the bottom line. He's more interested in his stockholders. He is interested in his investments. He is not really particularly concerned about sending, quote unquote, the message, right? And because he is not as concerned about sending the message, and again, we go back to the whole situation with leftists wanting to have access to kids, right? You would think, what's the big deal about Ellison buying DC? What that means, though, is, again, right, and this is the same thing that happened when Elon Musk bought Twitter. Suddenly, cultural Marxists don't have the capability of controlling the entire narrative. And because they don't have the ability to control the entire narrative, that defeats the purpose, because the only way that these individuals can win, and by the way, again, a lot of people tend to forget this, and I'm going to bring up Goddard's Law here in regard to the Nazis, right? Like back in the 30s, back when the Nazi Party, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party, was running Germany, the Nazis, specifically under Streicher and to a certain extent on Julius Streicher, and specifically under Goebbels. Goebbels was head of propaganda. Streicher was more like the media head. They had full control over the press. They had full control over the media. So basically, back then, it was movies, television, and newspapers. It was a lot easier to control the means of production and distribution. Such is not the case anymore. And every single time, and again, Ellison is, he might be a believer in Israel. He is a believer in his stockholders and his bottom line when it comes to his business dealing. So he will conduct, and he will expect that DC Comics will put out a product that is entertaining, that sells, that doesn't preach, that doesn't annoy you with wokeism. That's what's going to happen. And as a result, DC Comics is probably going to do well, as opposed to what's going to happen with Disney, where I don't know how long it's going to be, but at some point, Disney is going to have to, if Disney continues to go along the path that it is currently going on, Disney is going to have to start to sell off some of its assets if it is going to survive. So yeah, and Ellison, again, he is also mentioned in the Epstein files. I've not really not really gone into a lot of poking around when it comes to Epstein, mostly because it's not my area of expertise, although I have definitely listened to interviews done by Whitney Webb and listened to a few podcasts on Epstein. I do know that Zorro Ranch was as bad, if not worse, than Epstein's Island. I do know that Epstein was involved in more than just human trafficking. I do know, and I think this is I think this is something that I might actually want to look into, is the Epstein Hollywood connection, specifically his connection with Disney. might want to wonder if he also had a connection with Digital Entertainment Network back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. I've got a very interesting, if you've been a regular listener to my show, you know I have a very, very interesting story around Digital Entertainment Network and an encounter I had with a guy who, again, I can't say for sure whether he was or not, but I mean, the one thing that I do specifically recall about the conversation he had while he was being really fucking creepy was the fact that he was telling me at one point the internet was going to surpass regular media and become the media of choice, which is actually a true thing. Is actually turning out to be very, very true right now. And if it wasn't for the alt media, for instance, we wouldn't, a lot of the stuff that's going on right now, we wouldn't even know what was going on in Minnesota, for instance. You wouldn't know anything about the corruption that was going on there with the Somalis. So, anyway, yeah, if you're under some misguided impression that Larry Ellison is some type of a moralistic human being that's a believer and is going to somehow write in like a white knight and change Hollywood around, no, that's not going to happen. They're based upon what happened with Sushir Balaji. You know, I will say this: people have said some stuff about Musk over the years. At least Musk has not killed as. At least Musk, to my knowledge, Musk does not have a body count. Right? Yeah, and of course, right. You've also got the whole Jew thing. Again, this is just a personal point of view. For the most part, this show does not get into the Jew question. I mean, if every single fucking thing that's going wrong was blamed on the fucking Jews, like everything on the planet somehow seems to have a Jew connection to it, and it's just like, no, right? Like, enough. Like, just fuck enough with that shit already. Take responsibility for your own life. Stop blaming a third group for your problems. Now, are there, so yeah, I'm not even gonna go there. But yeah, anybody under the impression that Larry Ellison is going to be the white knight that saves Hollywood, he's not. And with that, I am going to move on to the next topic, which is, oh wow, Grace Randolph. Oh my God. Okay. Now, I will admit, right? I have heard some stuff about Grace Randolph over the years. I was not really willing to follow her. When I saw what happened with Nerdrotic, though, and the story about what happened with Nerdrotic and the way, well, with what happened with Nerdrotic and the way Grace Randolph doubled down. But here, let me give you the whole gist of the story, and then I got a video to show you. There was an individual at the BAFTA Awards. He has Tourette's. Now, I've encountered people with Tourette's. It creates a lot of awkward social encounters. The person has a hard time controlling their voice. It takes a lot of effort to control it. And if you're in a high stress situation, sometimes that's not possible. An individual said some stuff at the BAFTA Awards. Grace Randolph chose to be willfully ignorant and just had Tourette's explained to her and then chose to double down. When she chose to double down, she she got owned for that, but she didn't stop. She decided to play the victim, and this was her victim response. I wish I could include some violin music with this, but unfortunately I couldn't find any. But yeah, this is Grace Randolph playing the victim.
I was also extremely, extremely concerned, okay, to see that I Swear has been set to open opposite the Michael Jackson movie. I hope that Sony Pictures Classics, who is releasing this movie, considers moving the film. I would hope, I think that I Swear wants to come from a place of positivity. And I think that it is getting very quickly co-opted by people.
Maybe I downloaded the wrong video. Anyway, Grace Randolph played the victim. Anybody that went over to her Twitter account, well, of course, white knights, manginas, blah, 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 right? A couple people jumped on me. Grace Randolph blocked me. But then again, of course, my response to Grace Randolph was that I don't take recommendations or rating compliments from somebody who's too fucking stupid to know what Tourette's is. And doubles down after it's explained to her. That comes from a place of ego. Now, I gotta point out something, that ego is something that I'm certainly not lacking myself. But I mean, not only was it her, now it has dragged out into next week, and I may even have to cover this story again on the next show, because people are too fucking stupid to understand what Tourette's is. Okay? You have a hard time controlling your voice and what you say especially if you're under a lot of stress when you have Tourette's. And it's extremely different. And it's like, when you have this explained to you and you choose to not only ignore it, but double down on your own stupidity, right? You lose credibility. And yeah, it's not 2017 anymore. It's not peak woke. So when you do that, what ends up happening is that you get called out on it. Now, you could have all your little woke buddies, all your little woke corporate buddies try to run block for you everywhere, but it's like still the bottom line is that you're still doubling down on your own stupidity, right? Again, like, I was never a big Grace Randolph fan in the first place. That being said, though, it's kind of hard to want to be any type of a Grace Randolph fan when she doubles down this. And again, right, she's currently gone silent on it. The only problem is that even when she went silent on it, now you have Black Hollywood losing their shit over this. And it's like, could you just go be stupid somewhere else, right? Again, right? I have individuals that sit on the panel. Again, we have nobody sitting on the panel tonight, but when I have the individuals sitting on the panel, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to do your show because you cover stuff like this. It's like, well, gee, sorry, I have a film background. Okay? Politics is downstream from culture. In case you didn't figure that out, when I covered the Team USA gold medal a couple of segments ago, what part of that is a reach for you? So when it comes to Grace Randolph, yeah, she's stupid. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend her ratings anyway. And I mean, to a certain degree, I think she's getting ratings because she's like a little bit above average looking, and that attracts Simpson White Knights, whom, by the way, came after me. One of them kept doubling down, and I mean, I have to go there. I have to say something about this. Sorry, what are you getting out of that for doing that? Like, you think she's gonna fucking sleep with you? Like, she's not gonna sleep with you. She's not. Sorry, hate to break it to you, but it's not gonna happen. Do you think, you know, like, why are you defending stupid like this? Like, just why? That's a legit question. Like, why? And, well, I there's not much else I can say about this particular topic. She kept doubling down, and she kept doubling down to the point that Black Hollywood got pissed off. Or fuck Black Hollywood, right? Again, if you're wondering about Black Hollywood, I posted up something from the spot of Antrim, and it's on all of my channels. Links, by the way, down below. BitChute, Odyssey, MGTOW TV, Brighteon, Kick, Twitch, and I probably will add banned and censored when my economic situation gets better. Like, I posted it up everywhere because, again, Despot of Antrim is one of those guys that just does not seem to want to go anywhere other than YouTube. So the whole situation is just a bit comedic, and it does, like, stupidity like this just needs to be called out. That's all I got to say about it. And with that, we're going to move on to the next topic here. Topic number 5. Oh, man, we got a whole bunch of... Boy, do I have a whole bunch of topics to... videos to show you about this one. One of the nice things about international stories is that, especially if you're now on social media like Twitter and Instagram and whatnot, is that you can get foreign news sources on your feed. And I do have news source. I do have a foreign news source for this one. So I got a couple of videos on this. What combined, they probably run, I'm going to say, probably about 6 minutes, but I'm going to start out with the situation that, again, I'll get into the whole details, but this is the first one.
Iran might seem like it's quiet, but it's not. The government has turned off the internet in the country. It's been blacking out all communications throughout the world. But behind the scenes, they've been fighting against their own people and removing their own population, firing at their own population time and time again. At the same time, President Trump has canceled all his meetings with the leadership of Iran. Any talks of negotiations or peace agreements, they're off the table right now. And now we crack into what's actually happening on the ground in Iran. I think we're looking at the most dramatic, historic event that has taken place in our lifetime in this regime, what could possibly very much be.
Again, Matti, the most dramatic event once more in the last 2 years. I don't know where these next years is going to head this entire region and the world. But the facts are this. According to official reports of the Islamic Republic of Iran, there are more than 600 casualties in the protests right now. Yeah. But you have additional reports from outside organizations, human rights organizations that are residing outside of Iran that report of far higher numbers, more than 12,000 and up to 16,000 casualties in the protests. And not talking about those that were detained by the regimes. These numbers are tens of thousands. And the fact that the regime is doing trials, like speedy trials, and executing those protesters shows that the regime is a...
The crisis in Iran and what America is going to do. Unrest across Iran has left at least 490 people dead as Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said they were ready for both war and negotiations. This comes as US President Donald Trump warned of taking action if killings continue, while the Iranian administration blames US for internal interference. Here's a report by Mahashweta Lala.
As unrest continues in all the 31 provinces of Iran, claiming lives of at least 490 people, including 8 children, according to a US-based Iran-focused human rights group, the Iran Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Trump's remarks on taking action against Iran has fueled the protests and instigated anti-social elements, but has not ruled out negotiations.
But what was important was that because of his comments, elements seeking to create chaos went after increasing the death toll in the hope of possibly drawing the United States into intervening. We do not seek war, but we are fully prepared for it. At the same time, as I have repeatedly said, we are also ready for negotiations.
Earlier, Trump on board Air Force One said Iranian leaders had called for negotiations. He again warned that if the theocratic authorities continue to kill people, then the United States will hit them at levels that they have never been hit before.
Well, if they do that, we'll consider things targets that they wouldn't believe. If they do that, we will hit them at levels that they've never been hit before. They won't even believe it. I have options that are so strong. So, I mean, if they did that, it'll be met with a very, very powerful force.
During a protest rally in Los Angeles for Iranians, a U-Haul truck plowed into the rally. The U-Haul truck, with its side mirrors shattered, was stopped several blocks away and surrounded by police cars. Iran has also announced 3 days of mourning for what it called martyrs killed in Iranian national battle against the US and Israel. On the one hand, funerals of slain security force members were conducted, and on the other, several people gathered outside the country's forensic medical center to identify bodies killed during the protest. Marches in solidarity with the Iranian people were taken out in many countries. A small demonstration was held outside the Iranian embassy in London, where security was tightened a day after a video showed a man scaling the balcony of the Iranian embassy in central London and removing the national flag and hoisting the pre-Islamic Revolution era lion and sun emblem. Meanwhile, Iranian ambassador to India has called on people not to trust news circulated on foreign accounts, following the rumors of the arrest of 10 Afghans and 6 Indian nationals for rioting and destruction. Iranian authorities also organized large crowds attending a funeral procession of demonstrators who authorities claim were killed during terrorist actions led by the United States and Israel. With Mahashweta Lala.
It is always a good idea to get a third-party report in there. It is. I will say that without any second. Now, of course, we have Donald Trump commenting on it, and then I will get into my commentary about this. I might be on this for a while.
Do you have someone in mind right now? Because you said all the people you did have in mind have been taken out. What do you think?
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, you know, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody. But we have, I mean, Venezuela was so incredible because we did the attack and we kept government totally intact. And we have Delcy, who's been very good. We have the whole chain of command, and they've been, you know, look, the relationship's been great. We've taken out 100 million barrels of oil already, and a big part of that goes to them, and a big part goes to us. And it's been great. We paid for the war many times over, and we're going to be running the oil. And Venezuela is going to make more money than they ever made, and that's great for the people. The relationship has been great. It's been seamless.
Oh, wow. Look at that. I forgot to unmute myself. So I got to go all the way back to the beginning here to the end of this. Okay. Going back to the start. Let's just go right back. First of all, here, I'm going to put this up again just to remind a few people of what happened here. Now, the U.S. and Iran have got a rather structured issue. You go back to Mossadegh and the CIA and the relative and the relatively and the seizing of the U.S. hostages in Tehran, and of course the alleged sabotaging of the attempt by the U.S. government to rescue said hostages. You also have their sponsorship of the bombings in Beirut. You have them engaging in a tit-for-tat war with Israel over the past few years, including missile strikes, which of course landed in harmless areas, but nonetheless, those were missile strikes and those were aimed at Israel. You also have their backing of Hezbollah, you have their backing of ISIS, you have their backing of Al Qaeda as well. They are and let's not kid ourselves here, they are a religious theocracy. Most of the people that I have met that have left, again, there's a certain segment of the Iranian population that left Iran. They left Iran because they don't like Iran, just like you've got all those Cubans in Florida who have a very decidedly right-wing political slant towards Cuba and are generally Republican. Same thing with the Iranians. So yeah, you've got that. You've got continuous saber rattling with the United States, and Iran had gotten a lot braver with doing it when they aligned themselves with the BRICS: Russia, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and South Africa. Of course, the issue going on there is that nobody is really in the mood to be getting, neither Russia, because Russia's got its own problems, and China has also got its own problems. And that nobody really seems to want to be wanting to risk a global war over Iran right now. And of course, now, whether all of these protests that were happening in Tehran recently, the ones where the government, and again, I have to point out that was Israel Today, that first video that I pointed out, and all of those people getting massacred. Israel Today has a very obvious slant, which, by the way, is why I took India Today as a counterbalance to that. The whole thing is just now was that the functioning right-wing equivalent of what George Soros was doing in Minnesota and continues to be doing in Minneapolis? Well, I wouldn't put it past him. But here's the thing. The government in Iran has not been popular for a while. And while they are not as zealous as they were back in the late 80s under the Ayatollah, still not a particularly well-liked group of individuals currently running the government in Iran. And, the U.S. employed a very, and by the way, I also have to point out, the U.S. is also in a situation where they are desperately in need of a distraction. Starting something with Iran is a perfect excuse for a distraction. That has to be pointed out. There's this little thing called the Epstein files that's floating around right now. And again, I still don't think that Trump is really directly involved in that myself, because if there had been some direct implication between Trump and Epstein, like the Biden administration would have been all over it like white on rice. That's just my take on it. The whole thing. And by the way, in saying that, I am not rah-rah Trump. Don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm rah-rah Trump, because I ain't. The whole issue here is that there's the U.S. It is in the U.S.'s interests internationally right now to be creating some type of an international distraction. There have been multiple low-scale shooting wars that have occurred inside the Persian Gulf between the U.S. Navy and Iran that have never really been talked about. And again, I saw a story on Rumble recently about that. I wish I had saved it, but I didn't. But I mean, is there a possibility that this did Iran have a nuclear program? Yeah, Iran was definitely building a nuclear program. We saw when the US invaded Iraq that Iraq was much closer to developing a nuclear weapon than people took for credit. The Iranians were probably even closer than that. I mean, there's an interesting story. I can't remember. It's the Suxby virus or whatever that sabotaged the centrifuges that the Iranians were having, how it got out globally and caused problems globally. I remember that. That involved Iran. The whole issue with rising gas prices, I'm again not particularly happy about that, but life goes on. What I'm thinking here is again, right? I have to stop and think that this is an attempt by the Trump administration to create some type of an external distraction. I have to think that. I do. One last thing, and I just remembered this because it got called out on Canadian news. There was, and this, by the way, was the CBC that did this. Yep, I know. Canadians listening to this, yeah, oh no, can't be the CBC. They're so honest. Yeah, CBC actually posted up AI generated content of people mourning the death of the president. And Mark Carney actually complained that Trump left him out of the loop about his plans on Iran. Now, I'm going to just say this again, because I mean, I hate to say I sound like attacking the country that I live in, but I mean, this is just basically how it is. You have Canada currently has a prime minister that is clearly attempting to align himself with China. China is a member of BRICS. If Trump had included Carney in the loop about what was going to go on in Iran, if I'm Donald Trump, would I trust Carney with that type of that type of information? NORAD or not? No, I wouldn't. I don't think anybody who's listening to this podcast would actually be all that keen on including Mark Carney in the list of people who would be getting views on that as either, right? It wouldn't be there. So with that in mind, I mean, yeah, going back to the original point here, like this looks, and I mean, again, right? Well, I thought you were with Donald Trump. No, I'm not Team Trump. Got to point out that even though I'm not Team Trump, what I'm definitely not is Team fucking leftist. Just thought I'd bring that up, just in case there was some confusion there. The whole situation looks like it's a distraction. And again, there is some very, very long running history here. Personally, if I was Donald Trump, I would be wanting to find out who the architects were of the 1979 U.S. Embassy hostage-taking situation. I would put those people under arrest, and I would perp walk them the same way these guys got perp walked. Yeah, okay, granted, it's 47 years later, but you know what? Accountability is accountability, folks. So yeah, this is, and again, this is something that has been brought up, and I'm going to get into just the strategic objectives of how the U.S. is planning out these wars from now on. Because, and I'm going to get into the whole BRIC situation specifically. There are some generals in China that are somehow insane enough. They will look at their population and go, we have 1.6 billion. The United States has 340 billion. Therefore, if we send everything over, we will have 1.3 billion left, or now 1.1, and the U.S. will be completely depopulated. That's not how it works. That is not how it works. And again, right, because I've listened to Coast to Coast AM, and they've had individuals on there that have talked about wargaming scenarios. They have wargamed this out, right? What you are seeing with Iran is exactly the type of situation they would probably be employing with China, which is they're not going after, of course, they're going after military assets, particularly nuclear military assets. But specifically, what they're targeting is the leadership. They're going and they're targeting specifically the leadership in these countries, right? You take out 2 or 3 heads of state, you take out the people immediately supporting them, and if you take out enough of them, right, the remaining factions all start infighting between themselves to who's going to actually run the country and who is actually in charge, and blah, 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 blah. And the country loses its ability to engage in war because the whole chain of command has broken apart. So who do you take your orders from? Right? I mean, at some point, your ability to move large numbers of troops around on a board or on a map is severely inhibited because, there's that broken chain of command. This, by the way, is also the same thing that caused the Axis or Nazi Germany to lose the War of Normandy, because there was this split up chain of command inside the German armed forces, which prevented Rommel from being able to coordinate his troops on D-Day effectively and on time to deal with what the Allies were doing during World War II. Yeah, destroying command and control, and specifically going after the leaders is, by the way, is exactly the scenario that that war gamers in the military did plan out with China. So yeah, they're now employing this with Iran, and they're killing off enough of the leaders that it's sort of like, like the command and control has been removed. So who's actually in charge? Who's in charge? Nobody's in charge. So yeah, this is an attempt to distract from what's going on. Yep, this is an attempt to delay the inevitable with with what's going on in the US, but ultimately there is a long running feud between the US and Iran. And I also got to point out the people who are crying about that. I'm just going to throw this in before I move on to the next topic here. The people who are crying about Iran right now and the president there were also the same people that were cheering on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Case closed. And with that, we're moving on to the last topic of the night. And the last topic of the night is, oh yeah, Greta Gerwig and getting Chronicles of Narnia. Oh wow. Who is Greta Gerwig? Greta Gerwig, you might remember her from the Barbie movie. Now, the Barbie movie did surprisingly well. The reason why the Barbie movie did, and by the way, it is a misandric, man-hating feminist movie. Absolutely. What ended up happening with the Barbie movie, though, is that she tried so hard to mock the manosphere and the red pill in that movie that she ended up actually paying tribute to the manosphere and the red pill in that movie. And consequently, you had guys in the manosphere, in fact, a lot of guys in the manosphere saying, yeah, go see that movie. You know, the movie was supposed to be this feminists, we're gonna show them men, we're gonna show the manosphere, we're gonna show the red pill, like we're gonna show them up. And what they ended up accidentally doing, and a lot of it had to play because of the way they wrote Ken in that movie, that played by Ryan Gosling, is that the movie ended up being accidentally based. And the reason why the movie ended up being accidentally based is because she borrowed very heavily from The Matrix. She borrowed very heavily from Fight Club. And then she twisted the stuff around and she tried to make it look, she tried to mock it. And in the process of mocking it, she ended up she actually ended up making a pretty decent movie by accident. She caught lightning in a bottle by accident. Well, guess what? They have given Greta Gerwig the director's chair, and you may want to be sitting down for this, for the Chronicles of Narnia. C.S. Lewis was I believe he was even a Christian pastor. I believe it was some religion or another. C.S. Lewis was a fundamentalist Christian. Now, there's nothing to my knowledge specifically in The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe or any of the C.S. Lewis books that suggests that Aslan specifically was male. Greta Gerwig is engaging in potentially in a lot of gender swaps. Greta Gerwig likes to give the message. The only issue with what Greta Gerwig is attempting to do, though, is the fact that she got lucky. And I think that's why there hasn't been the second Barbie movie done yet. She got lucky with the Barbie movie and she ended up being based by accident. Now, is she going to catch lightning in a bottle twice in a row? Maybe. Is she going to be able to pull off the same type of feminist preaching and mocking? Or is she even going to go there, right? Is she one of those rare feminists that was smart enough to read the fucking room and realize that she lucked out to a certain degree with the Barbie movie? And will she just stick to the story? Maybe. Is the movie going to be a successful hit? Maybe. We don't know yet. It's going to probably be sometime next year when the movie comes out. Do I have an issue with Meryl Streep playing Aslan? No, I don't. There are two, again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there is any part of C.S. Lewis's books that suggest that Aslan was male. At the same time, feminists, as the books go along, though, like the oldest of the two girls or the oldest of the two daughters of Eve eventually loses track. There have been some feminists over the years that have, that have gotten really upset about that. The issue is, though, is that, I mean, here's what we might possibly expect. We're going to see a lot more emphasis on the female characters, though there is a very strong emphasis, especially at the start of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There's a very, very strong emphasis on the female characters at the start of the book. The Ice Queen in the book is a very well written villain. The woman who played the Ice Queen, Tilda Swinton, in the Chronicles of Narnia, the first movie. By the way, Chronicles of Narnia was the first movie I saw when I actually got to Edmonton, by the way. It was my Welcome to Edmonton movie. Saw it at the West Edmonton Mall. It's yeah, you're going to potentially see, it's going to be kind of hard to say. This is going to be Greta Gerwig's real acid test, though, right? Because everybody is going to be watching this movie and they're going to be looking for woke elements. And if Greta Gerwig introduces too much woke into C.S. Lewis, and again, right, gonna go into the pattern again. They introduce too much woke. And by the way, this will be determined long before the movie actually hits movie theaters. They're going to introduce too much woke, right? It's going to leak out somehow, right? Online critics, not the mainstream critics, not the ones that you see on Rotten Tomatoes, but the ones you see, but the YouTube critics are going to absolutely have a field day, right? You're going to have the woke crowd, the mainstream Hollywood media, attempt to run block, which is going to include sexism, misogyny. They'll play the race card. They'll do everything. They will say, "Well, it's not specifically noted that Aslan is a man, is male," and the two girls in the movie were the two main girls in the movie. I can't remember what the names of the two female characters are in the girls in the movie. Can't remember their names, but their story is very important. It got downplayed. We wanted to emphasize. It's like, they're gonna make excuse. They're gonna make excuse after excuse. They're gonna insult the moviegoers because heaven forbid, if the studios should take fucking responsibility for their own actions. All of that is gonna go down if Greta Gerwig chooses to go the woke route. The approximate odds of Greta Gerwig being able to catch lightning in a bottle like she did with Barbie is exceedingly remote. Could it happen? Yeah. I don't think, this is just a personal opinion, I don't think Gerwig is smart enough to do it. Now, maybe she is. Maybe she is that one director, that one feminist director that's able to insert these elements into a movie and make them seamless and concentrate on the story, which is exactly what she did with Barbie, and make it all work. Greta Gerwig could be that director. We will know when this movie comes out if Greta Gerwig is that director. Because it is Greta Gerwig, though, I have to reserve opinion. I have to reserve judgment. I have to wait. And we're all going to have to wait because we just don't know. We don't. And because we don't know, I'm gonna have to go into get woke, go broke, right? That is a real thing. Go back to topic number 1. Look at what happened to Boy Scouts. Look at what recently happened to Star Trek. Look at some of the other stuff that has come out, specifically anything that is remotely connected to Disney. Look at how poorly that stuff has performed. Look at She-Hulk. Look at, I could go look at what's happened with The Witcher. I could go on and look at Dustborn. Look at a lot of stuff, right? And again, right, when I start getting into this, we start getting wokesters who will go, oh, well, this was successful, this was woke. And then you take a look at it, and it's like, no, it's not. There's like a couple of elements. Look at what happened with, I can't remember that name of that video, that game that had those transgender characters in it. That didn't do particularly well either. It's like, I could go on and on and on and on and on. I could, right? If Greta Gerwig goes woke, she's going to get called on it. Now, she might be that savant that is somehow able to take the concept of woke and make it viable. This is going to be the acid test for it, though. Or maybe Greta Gerwig is smart enough to figure out that she doesn't know what happened with Barbie. She got unexpectedly fluky with Barbie. Maybe she's smart enough to figure that out. And maybe she will just, like, there will be feminist elements in the Chronicles of Narnia. You could pretty much set your watch to that. Now, is it going to be over the top? And is it going to be misandric like it was with Barbie? Maybe. Don't know. But we'll find out. And just like what happened with Captain Marvel, right? And I'm just going to say this again. The approximate odds that Captain Marvel, that she's going to be able to pull off another brilliant cinematic masterpiece, like, say, Barbie again, is pretty minimal. And if you're wondering what it was about Barbie that made the movie so based, well, first of all, go take a look at the story. Go take a look at the story of Ken. Now, there are multiple situations with Ken, in particular after Ken returns back to Barbie Land. If you take a look at some of the statements that Ken makes, and so the way Ken acts, and you go compare him to how Tyler, in fact, there is literally a line towards the end of the movie that Barbie says to Ken, which is literally a line taken out of Fight Club. It's taken out of Fight Club. Just thought I'd throw that in there in case you were wondering. It's taken out of Fight Club. But the way Tyler Durden acts and the way Tyler Durden performs is a direct, either Ryan Gosling figured that out or said himself, or he worked with the director, and it was a combination of factors, right? There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 or 6 scenes in that movie which are directly taken from The Matrix. There's a couple of scenes taken from Fight Club. There's definitely there's characters in that movie that are definitely complete and total copy pastes of characters from The Matrix. Or in the case of Ken, who is like literally almost a copy paste of Tyler Durden, right? There's a whole bunch of them, and I mean, I might just have to do a whole video. I might have to watch the Barbie movie because I did buy the Barbie movie. I might have to watch it and rent it and make notes on it. But I'm not gonna panic because Greta Gerwig got Chronicles of Narnia. She might do an interesting take on it. It is going to be a feminist take, but if she goes over the top, she will get caught. She will get called, and the movie will go down. It might not be the worst of woke. Despot of Antrim might not be doing worst of woke 2027 and be including The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's a possibility, though. Can't say. Won't know until the thing's actually done. So, with that, though, that is it for tonight. I talked for 2 hours here, and I got another show I got to do. Take after the fact. So, I am ending the show. Thank you very much for listening. In Certitude by Anna Ackstrom and Anna Dagger is the closing music. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi, this is Naroki5. I am going to be doing this until I die or I find something better to do. So please help me achieve this personal and, I think, noble objective by contributing to my Patreon or Subscribestar. Link is down below. Every little bit helps.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. That concludes the show.